Welcome back. One of the things that I wanted to make sure I took actual time to elaborate on was the real purpose behind this channel, why I wanted to start this avenue in the first place, and what was the creative endeavor that was kind of fueling all of it on the back end. And I kind of touched on it a little bit in the first video, but that first video was really just a challenge for myself to just get my first one out there and get used to doing this and start to figure out a setup that I enjoyed. So, why am I doing this? The reason is because I am pursuing a passion that I have always wanted to do, pretty much for my entire life, and that is film and television acting. So one of the questions that I got a lot from friends and family when I kicked this all off was, why acting, of all the things? And there really is no short answer to that, but I will do my best. So the primary reason is just, I kind of can't explain it. It was just this feeling that I always had kind of in my heart and soul that I wanted to pursue some kind of performing in my life. I didn't really know what that necessarily meant, but I do remember always just kind of having that. I hate to use the word calling, but I'm going to use that because we're embracing things that people have labeled as cringe when it's really not. It is the best way that I can explain it, is that it was a calling. It was this little nudge inside of my mind, my heart, my soul, my whole being that just said, it is time to pursue this. And I was always interested in creative outlets. I mean, back in the day before smartphones, we had actual video cameras, camcorders, and me and my friends would always make fun, goofy little movies with those. And maybe in another video, I'll get into the very elaborate Barbie playing that I did as a child and beyond. Shout out Ariel. We'll maybe get into that into another video. But the point is, I've always had it in me to be somewhat of an expressive person, but grew up feeling incredibly shy and introverted. So a lot of that creative expression that wanted to get out was stuck in there because I had assumed this identity as an introvert. So I was into chorus, like that was a big thing for me. I did show choir in middle school and I was in chorus in high school. But chorus was great for me because I could have that experience of being on stage and performing, but it removed some of the vulnerability aspect out of things, at least as far as having the focus fully on me, because I never did solos. I was never front and center on the stage with all eyes focused on me. And that was my sweet spot. That was my comfort spot, but I could still have that experience up there, contribute within a group and feel like I was a part of something. So that was great. And I encourage everybody to pursue, performance like that. Like, you don't always have to be the star of the show necessarily. So chorus was a great outlet for me, but I have this vivid memory. I don't know what grade I was in, but I was at my parents' house on the stairs, and my dad said to me, I don't even remember how the conversation came to me, but he said to me, wouldn't you ever want to join some of your classmates and get into the drama club or do one of the school plays? Because I think we had gone to a school play, or I was talking about one that I had watched and I just loved it, and my classmates absolutely killed it. And so he asked me about that, and I remember in that moment feeling that kind of that tightness in your chest, like that's something that you want to do, but you just can't yet. Mentally, emotionally, things are not aligned in that regard. You're not ready, but it's something that you want to do. And I remember I didn't get into all that detail with him. I just said, no, I don't think so. I could never remember the lines, or I made up some kind of excuse. I'm not sure. But I do remember feeling that just like in my gut and in my chest that I wanted to pursue it. And that sat within me for years after. You know that feeling when it's almost like the beginnings of the inner voice is trying to send you a little message, trying to get a thought to you, but you're like, no, that's how it was feeling. And I could feel the word that keeps coming up is guilt. Like guilt, but for myself, guilt of knowing I had untapped potential. So that was high school. So that sat for years after. And I just kept it dormant, and it sat, and it kind of grew ever so slowly over time. And then recently, I was forced to take a pretty heavy look at my life. And I'll get into the story of that maybe in another video. It was due to an injury that caused me to just have to slow down everything. But that slowing down and getting introspective with myself resulted in a lot, a lot of heavy stuff, unpacking things mentally and emotionally. And really, ultimately, what came of it was that little voice that I had always had within me got loud enough that she could not be ignored anymore. And I can't quite explain how things just started happening after that, but it felt like I was on a rocket ship. I made the decision on a Saturday that I was going to pursue this, and it was going to no longer be this just like little thought that I had in my mind that I wanted to try. And I just jumped in. And when I say I jumped in, I booked my first acting class, and I was terrified. So I got started with all of that, and I want to talk about some of those things in a different video, and just kind of like the first 5 steps that I took to get going. But the why is just, it's so many little reasons. It's so many little stepping stones that led to the big final decision to pursue this. And this is obviously only the beginning of all of it, but I clearly feel invigorated enough that it has not only ignited my passion to take action on something I've wanted to do for years, but I'm also starting things like a YouTube channel, which is another thing that I would have never done because I was so afraid of being perceived by people, and making sure that I was putting the most perfect foot forward and everyone was viewing me in the exact way that I wanted them to. And man, that's a whole other topic. I have spent a considerable amount of my life worrying what people thought of me, how I was perceived, how to avoid any kind of embarrassing or cringe experience in my own life. And I'm actively working now to remove the term cringe out of my vocabulary, because with very few exceptions, and there are some exceptions, but with very few exceptions, typically when we feel a cringe feeling, it's because we're watching someone in a vulnerable state. They are expressing themselves. Maybe it's someone who's doing like a little skit on TikTok, and there's something, it's eliciting a response in you that's uncomfortable. And for me personally, and I can only speak to my experience, anytime, most times, not every time, but most times that I would feel that emotion, it was because there was something being blocked in my own vulnerability. So it was uncomfortable to watch another person doing it. I specifically remember this time, I shared a person doing slam poetry on stage, and I was like, oh, this is too much for me. This is cringe. And a friend of mine DM'd me, shout out Katie. She's always ever so compassionately bringing new perspectives to my life. She just like drops in here and there and does it. We don't talk constantly, but when we do, it's very meaningful. And so she wrote to me and she's like, have you ever thought, I can't remember exactly what she said, but she was like, have you ever thought that slam poetry is the ultimate form of vulnerability expression? And I was like, damn, she's right. And watching it was uncomfortable because someone was up there on a stage not giving a damn about what people were thinking of them up there. And they were just being in their most brave, like the bravery it takes to get up there and perform in that manner in any capacity. And so what I realized was happening, and I now realize it, is that I was recognizing within myself that I wanted to be up, not necessarily doing slam poetry, but I wanted to be pursuing something that I was too afraid to do. And I was watching another person not be afraid, and that was uncomfortable for me. So that was a really interesting revelation among many. But one of the whys behind that is tapping into that new level of vulnerability and just raw and real emotion. And you might ask, okay, so you're talking about how you don't want to be worried about how you're perceived by people, but you want to get into acting where the primary function of your role is to be perceived. And I get that. That's a valid question. But I think more so for me, it's I want to be worried about how I'm being perceived in a creative, art-filled manner, not in a I have to be perfect, I have to fit within a societal norm, all of that. I want to toss all that out and not worry about it because it has been part of my entire life up until this very point. So yes, people will perceive me, but I want them to feel inspired by how they're perceiving me. I want that perception to be in the form of art, not just everyday stress and anxiety about worrying if I'm going to be cringe or embarrassing. It's just not, that's not any way to live. And I was too caught up in all of that for too long. So that was one of the main reasons. So for me, acting, we've got the calling aspect of it, which that is really the only way that I can explain it. It feels like a calling. And I've never had that before in my life. So sometimes I feel that the only way you can truly understand what a calling feels like is when you feel it within you, in your soul. And I don't know, the calling, it may be calling me to simply break free from some of these shackles that I have had on myself as I navigate the world, doing the human thing in my flesh suit. Or maybe it means that there's even more in store for me with all of this. So either way, I just want to capture it. I want to document it. And I want other people to get to this place within themselves too, to have self-discoveries that are rooted in beautiful feelings and love and expression and freedom. Like I feel like I'm getting emotional right now just talking about it, being free of judgment. And it's not in an angry way, because another thing that I always did throughout my life was operate in anger. There was a very large chapter of my life where it was just anger, it was defiance. I'm a strong woman, I'm this, and I am a strong woman. But you don't need to root your strength in anger and hatred towards other people or past experiences that you've had. That, to me, was clogging up so much of my potential and my growth and just my life in general. And I can't explain or fully express how incredible it feels to piece by piece feel like I am releasing that on my own and doing it through an art form that I'm just enjoying so much. So that's the why. I said I was going to make this short, and I knew I wouldn't. But there's a lot to it, and I'm looking forward to sharing even more about it, and just the journey and the steps to everything. And like I said in the first video, my goal is to really inspire other people to find this within themselves, whatever that might look like. And this is not going to be, I'm not going to feel joyful in it all the time. Some of it's going to be hard and uncomfortable and scary and leaping out of my comfort zone, but I've never been more excited to do that and to be able to operate and make decisions free from limiting beliefs and fear is, I want everyone who I know or come in contact with to have that experience. So that's the why for now. We'll see how that grows and evolves, but I'm really excited to be here and trying all of these new things. And I'm really looking forward to what's in store. So if you have any questions, just in general, I might start posting like, calls for questions on my social media or whatever, just to answer some of the things that you might be wondering, even if you're not necessarily a direct close friend of mine or family member. I want to hear from you too, because I want this space to be for all of us. And I can't wait to see how it grows. So thank you for watching and tuning into the second video. And my goal is to post every week, even if it's just like little journal check-ins on Sunday. That's the plan for now. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye.